people with high social skills. What's the biggest mistake in interactions? Be aware of when you're talking about yourself and how often. It's a habit that people get into where they don't actually talk to other people. They just wait until the other person is done talking to say what they want to say. People notice when you're doing that. It's really distracting, and it makes people to not want to speak to you as often.
I had a friend like that once. Every conversation would turn into him sharing his own stories, no matter what the topic was. He just waited for his turn to talk. It got old pretty fast. I found myself not wanting to chat with him anymore. I tried pointing it out, but he didn't really see it. Just made things awkward between us. Sometimes you just have to listen.
One thing that I think socially adept people do is make an effort to include everyone in a group in a conversation. They steer the conversation away from topics that exclude certain people. They catch newcomers up on what you're talking about. They direct questions towards people who are being quiet and who might feel left out. Not doing these things is a mistake, and one that can be hard to avoid for us less than socially brilliant people.
I get that. I have a friend who's great at making everyone feel included. Whenever we hang out, he'll always check in with the quiet ones, making sure they're in on the conversation. It's cool to see how he can read the room and steer things in a better direction. I think it's a skill that not everyone has, but it really makes a difference in group settings.
Bartender here. When I started in the service industry at 15, I had terrible social skills. But now it's second nature to me. A big key in small talk situations is to make it apparent that you're trying to be friendly and sociable. Don't get frustrated by your awkwardness. If you just attempt at conversation, smile, and be polite, you'll almost always get an A for effort. People will rarely hate you for being awkward and clumsy, but they'll almost always hate you for being a dick. Trust me, I made a lot more tips on days people felt sorry for me than on the days people were mad at me.
I get where they're coming from. When I started working, I was pretty shy too. Just had to push through the awkward moments. It's funny how people respond better to genuine efforts than perfection. I remember making some tips just because I smiled and tried to chat, even if I stumbled over my words. It's all about being real and not taking yourself too seriously. Makes a big difference.
I would say people tend to focus too much on how they appear during the conversation instead of actually giving genuine reactions. Someone will tell a funny joke, and instead of laughing, you close up and awkwardly chuckle because you aren't comfortable laughing the way you really laugh in front of a group of people. Basically, just chill out. People will like you better if you're genuine and real.
I get that. There was a time when I felt the need to hold back my laugh in a group. I would just nod along instead of enjoying the moment. Then, one day, my friend just let loose and it was contagious. I realized being authentic made the vibe way better. Now, I just laugh as I would alone. People appreciate realness more than I thought. It's easier to connect that way.
Monologuing. It's surprising how often, in a group, one person will glibly just maintain what almost sounds like stream of consciousness conversation, and then look up kind of surprised or confused to find everyone has kind of drifted away. And it doesn't require a silly tit-for-tat tennis match of comments or questions to avoid this. Just a general sense of how much of the communal airtime one is using, and then turning over the floor to others. Usually the worst offenders will occasionally ask a token question of another person in the group, and then immediately use it as a prompt, and seize back the talking stick for another new monologue.
I've seen this happen a lot at hangouts. One person just goes on and on, completely unaware that everyone else has checked out. They might throw in a quick question to someone, but right after, it's back to their monologue. It's like they don't notice the group's vibe at all. It's awkward when you want to engage, but they're just monopolizing the conversation. A simple pause could change the whole dynamic.
Alright, I got something I feel needs to be said, and no one ever says it. We all pick up jokes, behaviors, and personality traits from people we see on TV, movies, books, etc. That's fine. But sometimes, what is funny on TV is funny because it's annoying, and we like to laugh at other people being annoyed. For instance, the Todd from Scrubs. He gives high fives that will peel the skin off your damn hand. It's funny to watch that happen to Turk and JD, but holy shit, you shouldn't try to emulate that. It's shitty behavior. Another big one is Ron Swanson. Ron Swanson is an outdated, obnoxious asshole that is portrayed as a man's man because it's funny in its outdatedness. Don't pretend you don't care about people. It's not manly.
I get what you're saying. TV characters can be funny, but it's easy to forget they're exaggerated versions of real people. Like Ron Swanson acts tough, but really, caring about others is what makes someone strong. Those high fives? Yeah, they're a joke on screen, but definitely not cool in real life. Sometimes, we need to recognize what's just for laughs and what's worth taking seriously. It's all about balance, I guess.
Not continuing the conversation when there is a clear window to do so. Example, hey, are you so-and-so's friend? Yeah, I met him at the dance party. Awkward silence ensues because the other person just stands there like there's a million things that could have been said there. What dance party? You dance. What type of dance party? Oh wow, and so doesn't look like a dancer.
I had this moment with a friend once. We were at a mutual buddy's place. Someone asked if we liked board games. I said yeah, but then it just got quiet. I could feel the opportunity slip away. Like, why not just share what games we like or ask each other what we play? But nope, silence. It was weird. Missed chances happen all the time.
Recently, I beat out 15 candidates for a coveted position working as a student lobbyist for higher education. Despite having assessed my competition as possessing similar qualifications, I am convinced that I edged out for having a palatable personality. In politics, especially, these are survival skills. As far as the biggest mistake, match their tone. Nothing turns people off more than having their enthusiasm sucked into a void. If they're excited, pitch your voice higher, mirror their body language, and smile generously. Along the same veins, match their language. It's important to shift your vocabulary depending on your conversational partner. Do not consider it dumbing yourself down, but relating. This is harder to do without the confidence or social range. So, my only advice is not to default to an academic tone among your peers, unless the situation calls for it. It's a try-hard tactic, and nobody likes a needless show-off. TLDR, getting people to like you is a matter of mimicking. Meet them where they are, not where you are.
That makes sense. Adapting to others can really help in communication. It's interesting how much tone and body language can influence a conversation. People want to feel understood, so matching their vibe can create a connection. It's a reminder that being relatable matters, especially in social situations. The advice about avoiding an academic tone is useful too. It keeps things casual and less intimidating. Just being genuine can go a long way.
Don't brag about your kids. Don't talk as if they are God's little miracles here on earth. That said, don't divulge awkward info about them either. Example, my son is such a good ball player. The coach really ought to play him more. That's the coach's problem. Example, my son's ex never lets him see his kids. He works 10-hour days, and then he just wants to unwind with the guys, go out with a girl or two. She can't stand that. If he doesn't take them when she offers, he just misses out. She made it real hard on him since he's been out of jail.
It's true, you don't always have to share everything about your kids. I remember when a friend mentioned how his daughter won a small trophy at a local event. Instead of going on and on, he just said it happened and left it at that. It felt genuine, not like he was trying to show off. Sometimes less is more when it comes to family stuff. Keeps it real, you know?
1. When they bring everything back to them and make themselves the center of every conversation, all while simultaneously never listening. 2. Giving vague short answers like, "IDK whatever, don't care, cool, yeah." Sure, something they can be appropriate, but when it's always like that on their end, it gets irritating. 3. Any fool can condemn, criticize, and complain, and many fools do. However, it takes a person of great character and self-control not to. 4. Never asking how the other person is doing. 5. Talking too fast or with too many ahem.
I had a friend who always made everything about them. Conversations felt one-sided, and they rarely cared about what I had to say. Their responses were usually short and disinterested, like they were just waiting for their turn to talk again. It got old fast. It's frustrating when someone can't even be bothered to ask how you're doing. They would ramble on, filling pauses with that seemed endless.
If you're talking about a subject and you just happen to say something awkward, just move on and don't just think about that one mistake. Just carry on like nothing had happened. Remember, only you got the power to make any conversations awkward, and there's a 100% chance that your friend doesn't give two shit or will probably laugh it off.
I remember once I accidentally called my friend by the wrong name during a group hangout. It felt really awkward for a moment, but instead of dwelling on it, I just laughed it off and moved the convo along. To my surprise, everyone else found it funny too. It turned into a little inside joke, and it just reminded me that nobody really cares about those slip-ups. Just keep talking.
Assume that other people are more like you than not, or that they like people like you. This is easier after age 25 than before. By that time, different is accepted as expected rather than the exception. In short time, you will recognize your true eccentricities, and which of these tend to alienate those with whom you are not intimate. You can then capitalize on the weird things about you that make you indispensable to the boring lives of everyone around you. Changing you to fit others only works if it allows you to share yourself with them more effectively than not changing you.
I remember turning 25 and realizing that being different was just part of the game. I started to embrace my quirks instead of hiding them. I noticed that my friends appreciated my oddities. It gave us a bond. I think the key is to know what makes you unique and to use that to connect with others. It's about being true to yourself while still being there for those around you.
One of them is taking offense to things easily. For those who have this problem, try asking for clarification when you feel you should be offended. It's as simple as, "Sorry, what did you mean by that?" Kind of like asking them to repeat themselves, but in different words. The sorry is just to be courteous and allow that it may be you who misunderstands. Eventually, you won't have to ask anymore because you'll get better at reading tone and context.
I had a friend who always took things the wrong way. One day, I joked about their cooking, and they got really upset. I learned to ask them what they meant when they were offended. It helped clear up misunderstandings. Over time, we both got better at reading each other's moods, and it made our friendship stronger. Just learning to communicate made a big difference.
Being way too familiar right off the bat, especially if you're the kind of person where your idea of breaking the ice with people you've just met is establishing some manner of dickhead dominance by ribbing/negging everyone. Just be chill. We're not here to steal your girlfriend or usurp whatever social fiefdom you think you rule in your head. We're just trying to hang out.
I had a friend who would always try to assert dominance when meeting new people. He'd throw out insults or make fun of others to show he was in charge. Problem was, he just drove people away instead of making connections. Most of us just wanted to relax and enjoy the vibe, not compete for some imaginary throne. Sometimes it's better to keep things simple and just be friendly.
For me, I used to suck balls at small talk. Here's what I do now at small talk. 1. Ask questions. It's okay. Bullshit questions is fine too. When they answer ACT surprise in a good way and say something along the lines of "oh cool," "oh nice 3, ask another follow-up, or say a relevant thing from your experience. 4. Repeat "hope I help." Smiley face.
I used to be pretty awkward in conversations too. I remember hanging out with a friend who was great at small talk. He just asked simple questions and made everything sound interesting. When I'd answer, he'd act like it was the coolest thing ever. It made me more comfortable. Now I use that same approach, and it just flows better. It's nice to connect without overthinking it.
Honestly, a lot of guys have a tough time getting with girls out of sheer shyness. Let it go, friends. Really, that cute girl in the bar looks single and probably won't mind if you go over there and say hi. Now, don't be creepy, and if she doesn't want to be cool and leave, nothing wrong with it. You'll probably get turned down a lot more than not, but that happens to everyone. A lot of people seem to have a problem striking a conversation, and if you're in the same place as me, just go for it. You'll probably come up with something on the fly. Introduce yourself, ask her name. What does she do? She answered. Now you have a conversation going. There you go. It seems to happen a lot in the STEM field, or at least is where I've seen it, mostly because of how many guys there are. Just remember, girls want guys just as much. Keep your cool and go for it. And don't put her on a pedestal. It's creepy.
I get the whole shyness thing. Had a buddy who could never talk to girls. One night, we went out, and he just decided to approach someone. He was nervous, but he kept it simple. He asked her name, and they started chatting. It wasn't perfect, but they had a decent talk. Just showed that sometimes, you just gotta take a chance and keep it relaxed. Not every approach works, but that's part of it.
Conversationalists are very rare. People who can create and maintain a conversation that actually has some depth. Low social skills people tend to talk a lot about anything without regard for a conversation. A back and forth, old school villain monologuing. I've met people that can talk and talk and talk and talk, even say interesting things, but it's not a conversation. It's annoying as hell and makes me never want to spend an extra second with that person. It's not an ego thing either. I think they just don't know how much they talk. Conversations are wonderful. One-on-one lectures are boring as fuck.
I get it. I've had friends who just love to hear themselves talk. They have decent points but don't really listen. It turns into a monologue, and honestly, you feel drained afterward. I had one buddy who could go on for hours about random stuff. I tried steering the conversation, but it never worked. It makes you appreciate the quiet moments more, just having a simple back and forth instead of a lecture.
Firstly, listen. Secondly, if you have an insecurity, own that insecurity. Project it. Take the piss out of yourself. Be self-deprecating. I find that for whatever reason, people relate to that. And also, verbalizing it in front of other people means it's no longer a sheltered insecurity. It's there out in the open. Then 9 times out of 10, you realize that nobody gives a fuck about it other than you anyway.
I had a friend who was really self-conscious about his height. He would always make jokes about himself being the last pick in basketball. One day, he just started owning it, like really leaning into the jokes. It was funny to see. People started to laugh with him, not at him. He realized nobody was actually judging him as harshly as he thought. It was liberating for him, and it helped everyone lighten up.
Value leeching. Most people come from a mindset or a frame of taking value rather than sharing it. When you can offer something to somebody that comes from wanting to just enjoy being in that moment with them, it makes interacting so much more fun. Being closed-minded, if you're most likely to judge other people based on how different they are or the different thing that stimulate them, you'll fail to interact with a lot of people that can add meaningful value to your life.
I remember a time when I just decided to hang out without thinking about what I'd get in return. Just enjoying the moment, chatting with people who thought differently. Ended up learning a lot and having a good time. It's funny how being open can turn a simple interaction into something worth remembering. It's all about sharing the moment instead of focusing on taking something from it.
Not realizing when to stop talking. For people you interact with regularly, this could be a huge issue. People generally try to send subtle signs that they are ready to be done talking for the moment. Their body language changes, they will start to focus on a task or something besides the conversation. They will start giving short 1- or 2-word responses, and being able to pick up on that and shut up is important. When this happens over and over again over a period of weeks or months or years, it can seriously affect their long-term opinion of a person. I worked in retail for almost 10 years, and there were plenty of customers who were really nice people, but I would run away and hide from if I could, because I knew if they got my ear, I'd be hopelessly stuck for God knows how long.
I've definitely been in that situation before. You know, those conversations where you can feel the other person zoning out? It happens a lot. I remember working in a cafe, and there was this guy who would come in every week. Nice enough, but he'd just talk and talk. I found myself slowly backing away while he was mid-sentence. It's funny how you can bond over wanting to escape. It's a real skill to read those signals.
1. Divulging very personal details about your life to people you've just met. For example, I met my friend's wife for the first time, and within the first few minutes, she told me how her friend's uncle had tried to molest her when she was 15. We are now in our 30s. Very awkward. 2. Ties into number 1. Do not tell me about your medical conditions if I don't know you. My neighbor goes into great detail about his blood clots every time I see him. All I know about him is his first name, where he lives, and that he has blood clots.
I get where you're coming from. Meeting someone new and having them drop heavy stuff like that can be really awkward. Like that time I met a friend's spouse, and she shared this intense story about her past. I barely knew her. And then there's my neighbor who details his medical issues every chance he gets. I mean, I just want to know if he has a pet, not his health history.
Apologizing too much. Even the most socially gifted person will sometimes say something awkward, but you just move past it and keep going. I've noticed people who are nervous in social situations often apologize anytime they think they've made a misstep, and it really just increases the awkwardness and tension for both people.
I get that. I've had a friend who would always apologize for little things, like bumping into someone accidentally. It was kind of uncomfortable to watch. The more they apologized, the more the other person seemed unsure of how to react. It just made those moments feel heavier than they needed to be. Sometimes you just have to let things slide and keep the conversation flowing.
Don't make it all about you. I cringe when I hear so many people listen to their friend's story and then immediately go, "That reminds me of the time I..." or something. Show some damn interest in their story. You don't have to constantly one-up everybody all the time. What is something everyone likes to talk about? Themselves. Ask about their interests, show an interest in them. Don't make it about you. Pretty soon, they'll be asking you.
I get it. It's easy to fall into that trap of trying to relate everything back to your own experiences. I remember hanging out with a friend who always focused on my stories, but I noticed how he lit up when I asked about his past. It turned into a deep conversation about his hobbies, and I learned so much more about him. Sometimes it's just nice to let others shine.
Look at body language. But not just their body language, but your own body language. I cannot stress this enough. People do not understand how much this will tell about a person's current state. Breathing, perspiration, tone and inflection in the voice, eye movement, facial expressions, where their hands are, and more specifically what they're doing. First impressions are almost entirely based around body language, both yours and theirs. Ever have that uneasy feeling when you meet someone new? That is your brain trying to pick up patterns in their movement and voice and not succeeding. or picking up irregular patterns. Ever have an immediate, unexplainable warmth when meeting someone new? That is your brain recognizing patterns and saying to you, this is pleasing. The way they move and speak agrees with you. It's a completely underrated concept. You ever why interrogation techniques put so much emphasis on this shit? Because it works.
Body language does say a lot. I remember meeting this new guy at work. He seemed relaxed, but his hands were fidgeting. I felt uneasy right away. But then there was this girl who came in later. She had a warm smile, and her gestures were open. Instantly felt comfortable. It's interesting how our brains pick up on these cues without us even realizing it. Makes you think about how much we communicate without words.
People love to talk about themselves, so let them do that. Ask lots of questions, listen, and remember what they are saying. Too many people spend the part of the conversation where they should be listening, thinking about what they will say next instead of really taking in what the other person is saying.
I've seen this happen a lot. One time, a friend was venting about work. I just sat there, asked a few questions, and let them talk. As they opened up, it was clear they needed someone to really listen. By the end, they felt way better. It's interesting how just being present can make a difference in someone's day. People just want to feel heard and understood.
I don't have what I consider high social skills, but I work in a service industry where we get very close with our clients, and the one thing it's taught me is that things are only awkward if you make them awkward. To me, awkwardness is the opposite of confidence, so if you keep your confidence up, fake it till you make it, then you'll get over the feeling of awkwardness much quicker. Hope this helps someone.
It's interesting how we can learn from experiences. I have a friend who's not the best with social skills but always manages to handle tough situations at work. He just approaches clients with a calm presence. He often says that if you act confident, people respond positively. It's true, sometimes it's all about how we perceive awkward moments. Keeping your cool really can change the dynamic in a conversation.
Take an interest in the other person. Make them feel special and important while talking to you. Get a feel for who they are and try to crack appropriate jokes with them. I love listening to people since they often have a story to tell that you haven't heard before. Don't make everything about yourself, and try not to interrupt someone when they are speaking.
I remember a time when I was talking to a new friend. We just sat around, sharing stories. I asked her about her background, and she had some wild tales about traveling. Instead of jumping in with my own stories, I just listened. It was refreshing. By the end, we were cracking jokes, making the moment feel easy. It's cool how connecting with others can lead to some unexpected laughs and insights.
They fail to read body language, and this can be especially bad when the other person's body is saying, "I need you to sod off right now." This can actually foster resentment over time because you're holding the other person hostage to politeness when they need to not have to talk to you right now, but are too polite to tell you. This can be downright distressing for people with anxiety disorders, autism, or other people who need to strictly control their social exposure.
It's true that misreading body language can really mess things up. I once had a friend who just didn't get it. He'd keep talking even when you could see someone was clearly uncomfortable. Over time, it drove a wedge between them and others. It's interesting how something like reading the room can change social dynamics, especially for those who genuinely struggle in social situations. Balance is key in communication.
They don't listen with an empathetic ear, absorbing new info quickly and trying to figure out what that means. They assume because they've come to a new conclusion that others in the conversation haven't already. They describe all new ideas they have as if others haven't been able to figure it out for themselves already. This all culminates in a tangible sense of people not being on the same level in a room.
I've had moments like that with a friend. We'd be discussing something interesting, and he'd act like he was the only one who understood it. It kind of put a weird vibe in the air, like he thought we were all behind him. Sometimes, it's easy to forget that everyone brings their own knowledge to a conversation. It's just better when everyone feels like they're on the same page.
Not speaking up. The telltale sign of someone with bad social is sitting in a group, intently following the people and conversation without saying anything. Pipe up, say anything. It will be appreciated. I think the thing many accidentally antisocial people don't realize is that making and keeping friends is a lot like dating. You have to open yourself up to others wanting to talk to you. If you're in a group and people are talking about something, just piping up to agree or share some mundane story, even just tangentially related to the conversation, shows others that you want to talk and interact with them. They'll respond by asking a question about the anecdote you just told or elaborating on what you just agreed with. I get that a lot of people like to be great listeners, and people do appreciate that, but nobody wants to talk to someone who just listens. Just say something, anything, even if it's contrarian. As long as you are polite and non-combative about your opposite opinion/experience, they will respond positively and it'll make the conversation even better.
I get where that's coming from. I used to be the quiet one in groups, just listening. One day, I decided to share a random story about my last trip. It wasn't anything special, but people actually responded. They started sharing their own stories. It felt good to connect. After that, I realized that just saying something, even about nothing significant, really helps make friendships. It's all about putting yourself out there.
How to win friends and influence people is a great way to start. It may seem manipulative or disingenuous, but it is very helpful for introverts such as myself, and it teaches real appreciation for others. That being said, 1. Learn names and do not forget them. 2. Depending on where you are from, firm handshake. 3. Eye contact. 4. As most people have said, people are way more interested in themselves than they are in anything else. And that is not necessarily a bad thing.
I get what you mean. I remember trying to connect with new people at a party once. I focused on remembering names and made sure to listen more than talk. Just asking questions about them opened up a lot of conversations. It felt good. I realized that when I showed genuine interest, people responded positively. It's kinda simple, but effective. Just being present can really make a difference.
I commend your choice of words. People with high social skills, different from sociable/extroverted people. Some people are self-confident enough to be social butterflies, but too self-centered to be empathetic. And empathy is the foundation of good communication. Some very introverted people excel, indeed, in this key parameter, as they're often insecure and don't see themselves as that good or important to not acknowledge the person in front of them. Thus, some introverted people are, the way I see it, more socially gifted than a number of social butterflies. Also, if someone is telling you about their achievement, I believe you should never answer with a good for you. Personally, I find it poorly empathetic, as if you don't really care about their joy. Happy to hear, or that's so cool/great are more effective alternatives, in my opinion. But maybe this is a cultural/linguistic thing? It's very common around Reddit. I'm European, and English is not my mother tongue.
I know a friend who fits that description well. He's quiet but has a way of connecting with people that feels genuine. When someone shares their achievements, he listens intently and responds with genuine interest. He always finds the right words that show he cares. It's interesting how some introverts can be more empathetic and socially aware than those who seem outgoing. Makes you think about how we communicate with one another.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.